And now, moving on to this testimony segment. Kemi Ajayi, who was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, had an encounter with the woman of God, Pastor Diola Phillips, and she miraculously received her healing.
My name is Kemi Ajayi. I'm 53. I live in Lagos State, Nigeria. At the beginning of 2019, I started experiencing very intense pain all over my body. I didn't know what the pain was about. I took pain medication and I just went to the hospital to see the doctors, but nothing seemed to get better. And then I went from one hospital to the other, but the pain became progressively worse with time. I was told to go and do a few more tests. But as all this went on, the pain continued to increase with every passing day. On one of the days I went to do the tests, I was told to go and do an MRI at a particular clinic, at a particular diagnostic center. But I found out that I just couldn't move anymore. So from pains, I suddenly discovered that I couldn't move without pain. The pain got so bad, and right there in the diagnostic center, I found out that my legs couldn't carry me anymore. I was just falling down. Every time I tried to stand up, I would fall. Every time I tried to stand up, I would fall. So, and this went on for, let's say, 2 to 3 months, just in and out of the hospital and in pain. But when it got to that stage, I just noticed that I couldn't really move without pain. So somewhere along the line, I was diagnosed with spinal stenosis or something like that. But then I had to keep running tests, from seeing a neurologist to seeing a neurosurgeon to seeing a hematologist to seeing an oncologist, because they just couldn't determine what was wrong with me, and the pain grew worse. At some point, I couldn't move anymore. If I was in the house at that time and I was left on the bed, I couldn't turn. Every turn was a problem because I would go into spasms, like fits. I would go into spasms and I would just keep crumbling. At that point, I was, referred to see a neurosurgeon. Initially, he thought, oh, okay, there wasn't much to the tests, that maybe all I needed was to do physiotherapy, and all that. But at some point, he looked at the test results, and then he had a very serious look on his face. And then at that point, he told me that, oh, from what he's seen, it appears that I have a blood condition called multiple myeloma. Most of the bones in my body had been compromised. If I'm to use the exact words I think he used at the time, and this was in 2019, he says my bones had become like powder. Most of the bones in my body were kind of like broken, and those that weren't like powder were like biscuits. So my bones were practically not even able to carry me. And at that point, he was like, okay, even though I really couldn't move anyway, but he says, hey, the best thing that I could do was just to remain in one position. I was not supposed to move because some bones at my back had collapsed. The ones that hadn't collapsed were broken, and everything, looked very bleak. So it was very painful. I couldn't do anything. If I was to raise my hand, I would be in pain and I would scream and shout. Even talking was a problem. I had to talk at a particular pace, because if I talked, too intensely, I would be in pain. I would go into spasms, and all that. Swallowing was a problem. So immediately I was put on admission. Prior to that time, there was no firm diagnosis. But at that point, he says, hey, in order to save my spine, because he had a lot of concern with his spine, and that would have affected me being able to walk. So he says, the only thing that I could do now was just to stay lying down in one position. I was not supposed to turn. I was not supposed to sit. I couldn't even sit or turn anyway. So the instructions, probably just made it easier for me to just lie down in one place. And I was there on admission. I recall that when I was to go on admission, I had to borrow a wheelchair because I stayed at the 3rd floor, of the apartment building. So I had to be carried down into the car in a wheelchair. And then from there, I went on admission. While on admission, I just kept getting worse every single day. I remember a physiotherapist was told to come and attend to me. And the moment he entered the room, I started shouting, I started screaming, because my body seemed not to be able to handle any change, anything that was sudden, I couldn't handle it. So I would say, that went on for about 7 months. I was placed on so many medications. Yeah, so, just so many medications, from doing so many tests to doing, having to take so much medication. I couldn't turn on the bed. I couldn't do anything. Even blinking my eyes was a problem. I could hardly blink my eyes. If I was to yawn, I couldn't yawn. Yeah, I recall then that even yawning was a major problem. I couldn't do anything with my with my body at the time. The highly esteemed director, Pastor Diola Philip, sent for me. At that time, because I was in the hospital, the only way that I could go out of the hospital was on an ambulance. So at that particular time, we ordered for an ambulance, and the only way I could stay in the ambulance was to be flat on my back on a stretcher. So from the hospital, we made the journey in an ambulance to meet with Pastor D, the highly esteemed zonal director, on the particular day. So I came in and still on my back, still on the stretcher. And while I was there, Pastor D came in and she ministered to me. I recall that she addressed, whatever was caused the anomaly in my body. She addressed it, and the moment she did that, she asked me to stand up and do what I couldn't do before. And most of what I couldn't do before was I couldn't stand. I couldn't even turn on the bed, talk less of stand, talk less of sit. So the moment she said that, with a bit of help, I stood up. I got up on my feet and I started walking. And when I stood up, my legs carried me. Yeah, prior to that time, my legs wouldn't carry me. Every time I stood up, I would crumble. Every time I stood up, I would, fall down, or I would be in pain. But I noticed that at that time, I stood and my legs could carry me. And for whatever reason, I had told, the person that came with me to bring a pair of slippers. So I wore my slippers, and then I started to take little steps. And from there on, I was okay. I was okay. Yeah, I walked out that day. I walked on my 2 feet. Shortly after then, it would be maybe 2-3 days, I'm not sure of the exact timing. After then, the neurosurgeon that, placed me on admission ordered for me to do another X-ray to check the condition of my back. Recall I said the bones in my back, in my spine, they had been compromised. I couldn't, to the extent that he was of the opinion that I would need to have a surgery to correct it if things didn't improve. So he ordered another X-ray for whatever reasons, I don't know. And that was after, my meeting with Pastor D. And on the day the test result came out, he came and then he was sharing the results with me, and he says, hey, the bones have started coming together again. Your back is okay now, the spine is okay. The test showed that the bones around my spine, had healed, and that I was in a perfect condition at that time. From that time till now, it's been about 7 years, from the time I couldn't walk. It's been about 7 years, more than that now, from the time I couldn't do anything. And I'm walking, I'm running, I'm jumping, I'm doing everything that I could not do before. I believe, when Pastor D ministered to me on that day, she ministered to the root cause, whatever could have caused the condition that caused my bones to be broken, that caused me not to be able to walk. She ministered to the root cause, and I've only continued to increase and improve, from that day even till now. In the months, years that have since then, I've gone for several tests. There's nothing negative. Everything has been positive, And I'm so grateful to God. I'm grateful to our woman of God. I'm grateful to our man of God for this message of perfect health that he has given to us. I'd like to talk to, everyone in Lagos, or even beyond. Attending the Night of Blessings program will definitely impact your life. When you need healing, you will get it. If you need a transformation in whatever area of life, you will get it. Pastor ministered to me personally on that day. But even for you who may just get to hear her, I can assure you that that same spirit is at work. I'm a living testimony, and I'd like to encourage you. Don't hold back. Don't wonder if it will happen for you. It will happen. You will definitely rise and be healed.